I heard my dog growling at the garage. When I opened it, my fiancée and her coworker were half-dressed on my car. It was just past 11 when I heard my dog, Baxter, growling low near the back door. Baxter is a calm dog, the kind that only barks if something is really wrong. That night, his tone wasn't playful or curious. It was sharp, guttural, the kind of growl that makes your neck stiffen because you know he's warning you. I had been sitting in the living room half asleep, television humming in the background, when the sound jolted me awake. At first, I figured it might be a raccoon or some stray cat messing around the garbage cans. But then I noticed where he was staring, straight toward the garage. His teeth bared, ears forward, body tense. I grabbed the flashlight by the door and stepped out into the cool night. The air carried a faint metallic bite from the rain earlier in the evening. My garage door was closed, but faint light spilled from the edges, which didn't make sense. I hadn't been in there since the morning, and I always shut the light off. My gut tightened, my pulse quickened, but I tried to steady myself, thinking maybe I had just forgotten. Baxter followed me, still growling, hackles raised. As I got closer, I heard muffled sounds. Not voices at first, more like movement. Something brushing against metal, a dull thump. Then I heard a laugh. A woman's laugh. Familiar. My fiancée's. I froze for half a second. My stomach dropped in a way I can't really describe. My hands felt clammy around the flashlight. There was no reason Dana should be in the garage that late. And if she was, she wouldn't be laughing with someone else in there. I pressed my palm flat against the side door, pushed it open, and the moment the hinges squeaked, everything inside froze. The scene seared itself into my memory instantly. Dana was half-dressed, her blouse hanging open, skirt bunched around her thighs. Sitting on the hood of my car. Scott, her coworker, the guy she swore was just a friend she carpooled with, was standing between her legs, shirt off, belt unbuckled. His hand still on her hip. They looked like deer caught in headlights, except there were no headlights, only my flashlight beam cutting across their guilty faces. For a split second, the three of us didn't move. Dana's hair was a mess, her lipstick smudged, eyes wide. Scott looked stunned, but his expression quickly hardened, like he wanted to play it off. Baxter started barking furiously, lunging forward on the leash I had wrapped around my wrist. I didn't hesitate. My voice came out louder than I expected, echoing against the garage walls. What the hell is this? Dana scrambled, trying to pull her blouse together. Scott stepped back like he might square up to me, but he had the look of someone unprepared for an actual fight. He muttered something under his breath, but I didn't care what it was. The sound of their breathing, the sight of their half-naked bodies in my garage on my car, my brain was already in overdrive. You bring him here? In my house. On my car. I shouted, the words flying out without control. Dana stammered, her hands shaking as she tried to adjust her skirt. It's not what it looks like, she started, but the words were hollow, pathetic. Not what it looks like. I stepped further in, flashlight beam steady on both of them. You're half naked on top of my car with your coworker. How many different ways could this look? Scott finally spoke, his tone smug. Calm down, man. You don't want to make this worse. That was it. That smug tone snapped something in me. I lunged forward before I even thought it through. My fist caught him across the jaw. The flashlight clattered to the floor as Baxter barked wildly, jerking at the leash. Scott stumbled back against the workbench, knocking over a box of tools. Dana screamed, rushing between us, but she barely got a hand on me before Scott came swinging back. He clipped my shoulder, more sloppy than solid, but enough to fuel my rage. I shoved him hard into the shelves, and paint cans rattled down. The noise must have carried because I saw my neighbor's porch light flick on through the small garage window. Dana kept shouting for me to stop, but I barely heard her. My fists moved again, connecting with Scott's ribs. He wheezed, grunted, tried to push me off, but he wasn't prepared for someone actually fighting back. This wasn't some bar scuffle. This was my garage. My fiancée. My car. I shoved him down to the concrete. He scrambled, half-dressed, one shoe off, cursing as he tried to get up. Baxter lunged forward, snapping his teeth inches from Scott's leg. The only thing stopping him was my grip on the leash. Dana shrieked again, pulling me back by the arm. Ryan, stop. You're going to get arrested, she cried, tears streaming down her face. That line broke through the noise for a second. Arrested? She was worried about me being arrested? After what she was doing. I yanked my arm free, glaring at her. Arrested? For what? Defending my own garage from you two. And right on cue, headlights washed across the driveway. A car slowed, then stopped. My other neighbor, Mr. Harris, stepped out, phone in hand, his face pale as he stared through the open garage door. Is everything all right in here? He called, though his tone suggested he already knew it wasn't. Dana tried to rush forward, smoothing her hair, pulling herself together. It's fine, just a misunderstanding, she said, voice shaking. But Scott was on the ground, coughing, holding his side, his shirt twisted, belt still undone. Nothing about the scene looked like a misunderstanding. Mr. Harris didn't buy it. "I'm calling the police," he said firmly, already dialing. Dana screamed at him not to, but it was too late. Within minutes, red and blue lights flickered against the house. The officers separated us immediately, pulling me to the driveway while one helped Scott up. He looked pitiful, stumbling, his lip bleeding, trying to act like he had been the victim. Dana clung to him, whispering frantically, pointing at me. One officer approached me. "Sir, can you explain what happened here?" I steadied my breathing, forcing the words out clearly. "I caught my fiancée and her co-worker half-naked in my garage on top of my car. I confronted them. He came at me. I defended myself." The officer raised an eyebrow, then glanced toward the garage. His partner was already shining a light inside, taking in the scattered clothes, the tools knocked over, the fresh scratches on my car's hood. Dana started sobbing loudly, trying to paint herself as the victim. Scott, still clutching his ribs, muttered about being attacked without reason. But the officer inside the garage found the small security camera I had installed months ago, mounted above the workbench. "Does this camera work?" he asked me. I nodded. "Records everything. It's motion activated." That changed everything. They secured the footage, reviewed enough to confirm the truth. Dana's excuses dissolved. Scott's smugness disappeared when he realized the video captured everything, from the moment they stumbled into the garage to when I walked in. The officers didn't arrest me. Instead, they told Scott to leave immediately, escorted by one of them, while Dana stood there humiliated. She tried to plead with me, her voice trembling, but I ignored her. My neighbors stood outside, whispering, watching everything unfold. By the time the police cars pulled away, the night air felt heavier, thicker. I stood in the driveway, Baxter pressed against my leg, his growl finally fading. Dana was inside the house, pacing, crying, trying to spin some story about stress, about loneliness, about mistakes. But I wasn't listening anymore. The image of her on my car with him was burned into my mind. The humiliation of fighting a half-dressed man in my own garage while neighbors watched and police intervened wasn't something I could ever erase. And as I stood there, staring at the empty street, one thought settled firmly into place. This wasn't over. The morning after the garage explosion, the house felt different. Quiet in a way that wasn't peaceful. Every corner carried the weight of what had happened. The coffee maker sputtered, filling the kitchen with the familiar smell, but nothing felt routine anymore. Dana was upstairs, pretending to sleep, while I sat at the table staring at the steam rise from my mug. Baxter lay at my feet, his head resting on his paws, occasionally glancing toward the stairs like he could sense the tension too. When Dana finally came down, she looked drained. Her makeup was smeared, her hair tied back in a messy knot. She avoided eye contact, fidgeting with her phone. She wanted to talk, but I had no patience for her rehearsed lines. She started with the predictable, stress from work, how she felt lonely when I worked long hours, how Scott just understood her. The words rolled out like excuses she had polished in her head all night. I cut her off. "You don't crawl half naked onto my car with someone you barely know because you're stressed." Her face twisted, caught between anger and shame. She snapped that I was overreacting, that it hadn't gone that far yet. I almost laughed at the audacity. "It went far enough," I said, pointing toward the garage. "That's all anyone needs to see." She stormed off, slamming the door to the guest room. It wasn't even noon, and the engagement was effectively over. But things didn't stop there. By the afternoon, her mother called me. Somehow, Dana had already spun a version of the story where she was the victim, where I was controlling, jealous, aggressive. Her mother wasted no time accusing me of traumatizing her daughter and demanded I leave the house so Dana could feel safe. I nearly dropped the phone from laughing at the irony. Safe? I repeated. She was in my garage with another man. Half-dressed. On my car. Safe from what? Her own choices. Her mother didn't budge. She made it clear. They were standing behind Dana, no matter the evidence. That conversation hit harder than I expected. I had supported Dana financially for 2 years while she finished her graduate program. Rent, utilities, even part of her tuition. Her family had always been polite but distant, never offering more than a weak smile when I showed up for dinners or holidays. Now, in the one moment where the truth was clear, they closed ranks against me. Still, I didn't waste energy trying to convince them. I had bigger concerns. By the end of the week, Scott's girlfriend reached out. Her name was Melissa. I had seen her once at an office holiday party, tall, sharp-eyed, with a calm confidence that made her stand out from the rest of Scott's coworkers. She called me out of the blue, voice steady but tinged with exhaustion. "I think we need to talk," she said. We met at a cafe downtown the next evening. Melissa showed up with a folder tucked under her arm, her face drawn but composed. She didn't waste time on small talk. I saw the footage, she said bluntly. Scott tried to delete everything, but I found backup clips in our cloud account. He's been using our shared drive for months, saving things he thought I wouldn't notice. She slid the folder across the table. Inside were screenshots, emails, timestamps, hotel reservations, dinner bills, messages between Scott and Dana that made my stomach churn. Some of them went back nearly 8 months. I forced myself to read every word, though each line felt like a knife. Dana had told me she was working late, pulling long shifts at the office. Half of those nights, she was with him. Melissa sat across from me, her hands folded, her voice calm. I thought you should see it before he tries to bury it. Her composure impressed me. She wasn't trembling, wasn't crying, wasn't desperate. She was calculating. It was the same energy I felt building in myself. What are you planning to do? I asked. She leaned back, exhaled slowly. I don't know yet, but I'm not letting him walk away without consequences. That was the first moment I realized we weren't enemies. We were two people scorched by the same fire. Over the next few days, we kept in touch. We shared information, comparing dates and details. The more we uncovered, the more it became clear Scott and Dana had been reckless. They weren't just cheating, they were careless enough to leave trails everywhere. But while Melissa and I pieced things together, Dana escalated. She began trying to poison my reputation at work. She knew I worked in a mid-sized tech firm, and she sent messages to one of my managers, suggesting I had a violent temper, that I had been unstable since the engagement. She exaggerated the garage incident, painting it as if I had attacked Scott unprovoked. It nearly cost me my job. I got pulled into HR, forced to explain everything in detail. Thankfully, the footage from the garage saved me. One of the officers who had been there even provided a short written statement confirming that Scott had been half naked in my garage when I walked in. It was humiliating to lay all of it out, but it cleared me. When I left the HR office that day, I sat in my car gripping the wheel, shaking with anger. Dana had gone from betrayal to sabotage. She wasn't content with ruining our relationship. She wanted to drag me down with her. Melissa called me that evening. I told her what had happened, and she wasn't surprised. Scott tried the same thing at my job, she said. He told people I was paranoid, unstable. Classic deflection. Her tone hardened. We can't keep defending ourselves forever. We need to flip the script. That was when the idea of revenge stopped being abstract. It became strategy. We started compiling everything. Receipts, hotel bookings, messages. Melissa had access to Scott's email, and I had months of financial statements showing what I paid for Dana while she was sneaking around. We built timelines that overlapped perfectly, painting a picture that neither of them could deny. In the middle of all this, Dana tried another stunt. One Saturday, I came home to find her in the driveway with her father. They had brought boxes, acting like they were entitled to take half the house. Her father stood there, puffed up with self-righteous anger, accusing me of being abusive. I didn't argue. Instead, I walked them inside, opened the laptop, and played the garage footage on the TV screen. Silence. Dana turned pale. Her father sputtered, looking from the screen to me, then to her. For the first time, I saw a crack in his blind defense. I'll give you an hour to grab your things, I said calmly. Then you're gone. Dana tried to protest, but her father shut her down, muttering something about being disappointed as he helped her carry out the boxes. That small victory felt like air after drowning. But Melissa and I knew it wasn't enough. Scott still had his job. Dana still had her family's sympathy, at least partly. If we didn't push harder, they would wriggle away, leaving us with scars while they carried on. Melissa's eyes gleamed one night over drinks when we sketched out our plan. They think they're untouchable, she said. But they've already given us all the tools we need. It's just about where and when we use them. I nodded, the anger in me cooling into something sharper. Not rage, not grief. Strategy. For the first time since that night in the garage, I felt control returning to me. And I promised myself I wouldn't waste it. The weeks after Dana left the house were both liberating and tense. On the surface, I had space again. No more waking up to the smell of her perfume on the pillow, no more awkward silences at breakfast. Yet beneath that quiet, the storm brewed. Scott still strutted around his office as if nothing had happened. Dana still posted curated smiles on social media, painting herself as a victim of toxicity. Their lives, at least publicly, remained intact. Mine had been fractured. That was when Melissa and I decided to stop waiting for karma. We met again at the cafe, this time sitting in the corner booth with laptops open, like conspirators plotting a heist. Melissa came prepared. She had access to Scott's work email. He had been arrogant enough to use their shared computer for everything. There were chains of messages where he coordinated late-night projects with Dana, many written during office hours, on company time, using company resources. His boss is strict about relationships inside the team, Melissa explained, scrolling through the emails. This is a direct violation. If we package this right, he's done. I leaned forward. And Dana? Melissa smirked. She's copied on half of these messages. If her company sees it, they'll have to act. They pride themselves on a clean HR record. Affairs between coworkers, especially using work time and resources, are a nightmare for liability. We both knew it wasn't just about jobs. It was about stripping them of the stability they had weaponized against us. But before we acted, I wanted insurance. That night, I gathered everything I had on Dana. Bank statements showing the tuition payments I covered, receipts for rent, groceries, vacations, all the expenses she insisted we split evenly, but rarely contributed to. I wasn't building it to shame her. I was building it to protect myself. If she tried to claim I had exploited her, I wanted a paper trail that proved the opposite. The turning point came when Melissa discovered something unexpected. Look at this, she said one evening, sliding her laptop toward me. On the screen was a credit card statement. Scott had booked a hotel for an entire weekend, charging it to a company card. The memo read, client retreat, but the dates lined up with one of the nights Dana had told me she was at a networking conference. Melissa's grin was cold. Fraud. If the company sees this, it won't just be about HR violations. This is theft. The possibilities unfolded quickly. With careful timing, we could dismantle them both, not through lies or exaggerations, but through the evidence they themselves had left behind. We drafted everything. Melissa assembled Scott's emails, expense reports, and the damning hotel charge. I prepared the garage footage, financial receipts, and a concise timeline of Dana's excuses compared with reality. It was like loading ammunition, but we didn't fire right away. I'll admit, part of me wanted to savor the suspense. Another part worried about miscalculating. We couldn't afford to look like bitter exes grasping at straws. We needed precision. The opportunity arrived in the most unexpected way. One afternoon, I got a call from a blocked number. When I answered, Dana's voice trembled on the other end. Ryan, please. Can we talk? Not like before. Just, please hear me out. I almost hung up, but curiosity got the better of me. We met in a public park 2 days later. She looked different, less polished, her makeup thinner, dark circles under her eyes. She sat across from me on the bench, hands clasped, speaking in bursts. I made mistakes. I know I hurt you. Scott, he's not what I thought. He's been pushing me, making promises. I feel trapped. I listened, stone-faced. She leaned closer. I just need help. A way out. I almost laughed. After months of betrayal, after trying to sabotage my job, she came crawling back because her new choice was crumbling. But I didn't let my anger slip. I nodded, let her talk, let her believe she had a chance to soften me. When I left the park that day, I knew I had leverage. She was already unraveling. Melissa was sharper than I was at spotting the cracks. She's setting herself up for damage control, Melissa said after I told her. If we hit them now, she'll fold faster than he does. So we did. The first strike was professional. Melissa sent Scott's boss a clean, anonymous package, the email chains, the hotel receipts, the company card misuse. She didn't embellish, didn't add commentary. Just facts. The effect was immediate. By the next week, Scott was pulled from his projects, then quietly escorted out of the building. Melissa confirmed through her own contacts. He'd been suspended pending investigation. Dana's turn came next. I prepared a packet for her company's HR department. It included copies of the garage footage, timestamps of her overtime lining up with Scott's emails, and expense receipts. I kept my tone professional in the cover letter. No bitterness, no insults. Just concern that the behavior could reflect poorly on the company. 2 weeks later, Dana was called in for a review. She tried to spin the narrative, but the evidence was airtight. They didn't fire her immediately, but they demoted her, cut her hours, and put her under close watch. The fallout rippled outward. Dana's family, so quick to call me controlling, saw the truth once the companies acted. Her father called me late one night, his voice brittle. I didn't realize, he started, then trailed off. He didn't apologize outright, but the silence carried his regret. It was enough. But the most satisfying moment came face to face. Scott showed up at my driveway one evening, his car screeching to a halt. He stormed up, his eyes bloodshot, his voice shaking with rage. You ruined me, he spat. Do you know what you've done? I stood calmly at the top of the steps, Baxter beside me. I didn't ruin you, I said evenly. You did that when you stepped into my garage. He lunged forward, fists clenched, but stopped when he saw the small red light on the porch camera. His jaw clenched, then he turned and stomped back to his car. Melissa later told me he tried to pin everything on her, calling her vindictive, untrustworthy. But with the paper trail stacked against him, no one believed his excuses. Dana, meanwhile, slipped further into desperation. She sent long messages, apologizing, begging, swearing it had been a mistake. She claimed she loved me still, that she had been confused, that Scott had manipulated her. Each message felt like déjà vu, like the same hollow lines she had rehearsed that first morning after the garage. I didn't reply. Melissa and I kept refining our strategy. Not because we needed more revenge, but because the pattern was clear. They would try to claw back. We had to stay 2 steps ahead. The plan wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about survival. And yet, I can't deny the satisfaction that came with watching their world collapse, brick by brick. By the time fall rolled around, the cracks had widened into chasms. Scott was no longer under review. He was out. Fired. The company found more than just the hotel fraud. Melissa had passed along other receipts he had buried, smaller charges that, when added up, painted him as reckless and dishonest. He didn't get a reference, didn't get a chance to slip out quietly. He was blacklisted in his industry. Word spread fast in their field, and within weeks, no one wanted to touch him. Dana, meanwhile, tried to cling to normalcy. She still showed up at her job, but the demotion was a scarlet letter. She was stuck under a supervisor who didn't trust her, every move scrutinized. Her coworkers whispered. The bright, ambitious reputation she had cultivated was gone. Her family, once her biggest defenders, grew quieter. They no longer called me to accuse me. Instead, they called less and less even for her. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that her father had stopped offering financial help. They had been embarrassed, publicly embarrassed, when her workplace discipline became the subject of office gossip that leaked into their circle of friends. But the hardest hit for her wasn't professional. It was financial. I had pulled all the documentation I'd kept of the money I'd poured into her graduate tuition, the rent, and everything in between. I didn't sue her, but I used it strategically. When her family accused me one last time of abandoning her, I emailed them the breakdown. Every dollar. Every receipt. It was a quiet message. I had carried her. She had sunk herself. The call stopped after that. Scott's downfall was more theatrical. Melissa, as calm as she had been through everything, finally confronted him in public. She met him outside their old apartment, with a box of his things packed neatly, waiting on the curb. He had tried to sneak back in, begging her for a second chance, swearing Dana had meant nothing. But Melissa didn't scream. She didn't throw his clothes into the street like in some cliché. She simply handed him the box, then locked the door behind her. The neighbors watched. He stood there, red-faced, humiliated, forced to lug his box down the street. Melissa called me later that night, her voice steady. That was the last time, she said. He doesn't get another conversation. I envied her composure. I wasn't sure if I could have stayed that calm in the face of everything. Dana, on the other hand, wasn't done clawing. One night, she showed up at my house unannounced. She had been drinking. I could smell it on her breath when I cracked the door. She started crying, begging me to let her in, saying she couldn't sleep, that she missed me, that Scott had ruined her life. Ryan, please, she slurred. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. I didn't know what I was doing. I kept the door chain latched, standing there with Baxter growling at her feet. You knew exactly what you were doing, I said, and you thought you'd get away with it. Her tears turned to anger. She accused me of being vindictive, of ruining her job, of turning Melissa against Scott. The delusion was staggering. I didn't ruin anything, I told her. You burned it yourself. She screamed, pounding the door once, then stumbled back down the porch steps, sobbing into her phone. I never found out who she called that night. I didn't care. The weeks that followed stripped away whatever illusion she had left. She moved into a cramped one-bedroom on the edge of town. Without her family's help, without Scott's income, she had to survive on her reduced paycheck. For the first time in her life, she had no safety net. Melissa and I, strangely enough, grew closer during this time. Not in a romantic way, though people assumed that. It was more like battle-forged trust. We had seen the ugliest parts of betrayal together. We had strategized, shared late-night calls, traded evidence like soldiers passing ammunition. When it was over, there was a bond. One evening, over coffee, Melissa looked at me with that same sharp calm she always carried. They're finished, she said. Scott's blacklisted. Dana's cut off. We don't need to do more. She was right. There was no satisfaction in beating a corpse. The revenge had already run its course. The rest was just watching them collapse under their own weight. But consequences don't end cleanly. Months later, I ran into Dana at the grocery store. She looked smaller somehow, tired, pale, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She spotted me and froze, a basket dangling from her arm. For a long second, she just stared. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, I'm sorry. I looked at her, but I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence was louder than any response. She turned away, disappearing into the next aisle. That was the last time I saw her. Scott, I heard through Melissa, bounced between temp jobs, each one shorter than the last. He had a reputation now, the kind that follows you no matter how much you try to bury it. Eventually, he moved to another state, desperate to start over. But even there, Melissa's contacts told her his arrogance followed him. As for me, the quiet of my house returned. Not the heavy quiet from before, but a steadier one. I kept working, kept building back the parts of my life Dana had tried to wreck. Baxter remained at my side, more loyal than any person could hope to be. And Melissa? We stayed friends. Every now and then, we'd meet for coffee, swap updates, laugh at the absurdity of how it all started, with a dog growling at a garage door. The story ended not with fireworks, not with triumphant victory speeches, but with something better, stability. Dana had lost her job's respect, her family's support, her financial comfort, and the man she betrayed me for. Scott had lost his career, his reputation, and the girlfriend who saw through his lies. They both got what they gave, emptiness. And I walked away with the one thing they couldn't touch, my peace.